And the time coming coming up on 12:06 here on the Wednesday edition of Helping Seniors of Brevard. I'm John Harper, but let's get the show underway right now with the Executive Director of Helping Seniors of Brevard and the host of the show. Here is none other than Kerry Fink. Hi, Kerry, and Happy New Year to you.
Hey, John Harper, and Happy New Year to you. Does that make us like the odd couple, judging from the theme music? But it's all good. Welcome to 2022, and we're believing this is going to be a really good year for all the things that we're trying to do. They told us, almost 2 years ago, give us 30 days to stop the spread. And as we go into 2022, it looks like we're all still being very careful, which is the wise thing to do. We're getting our vaccinations. We're getting our booster shots. We're wearing our masks when it's appropriate and all of those things. So we're expecting a great 2022 as we go along here with Helping Seniors of Brevard. And as you know, as we go into 2022, this now marks the 11th year of service to the community by the Helping Seniors of Brevard 501c3 charity. Joe Steckler, our president and founder, after successfully building those things called the Joe's Clubs that till this day still serve as adult daycare centers across the county and really helping get everything launched and rolling with the Brevard Alzheimer's Foundation. He said back in, I think it was the 2010 time, he said, I want to form an organization that will really help people with issues that go beyond memory care. He said memory isn't the only issue seniors face, and there needs to be an organization that takes care of that. So now going into our 11th year, finishing up a full decade of service in this community, we've operated the county Senior Information Helpline, which is that free call to 321-473-7770, 321-473-7770. And then we've also done lots and lots of media trying to get information in the hands of folks that will help them develop their own aging plan. And of course, if you know Joe, he's the most tireless advocate on behalf of seniors. So whether it's a governmental organization, another nonprofit, or if it's a business, Joe is always talking up the need that if we're here in Brevard County, you got to look after seniors. And so with that kind of as our backdrop, we're so excited about going into our theme for 2022, which is called Getting Your Ducks in a Row. And we're talking about creating your aging plan. So in the studio today, I'm going to introduce our two excellent guests. First of all, I always want to go from the movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Not Worthy, because I'm speaking about we're in the presence of board-certified elder law attorney. He's been a friend of the Helping Seniors organization going back before there was such an organization, helped Joe in the Brevard Alzheimer's days. He's also the president of the Space Coast chapter of the Florida State Guardianship Association. He's served in that role many times. He does a lot of educational and informational seminars and things to help seniors and their families organize correctly. We're speaking about none other than Bill Johnson. How are you today, sir?
I am doing well. Happy New Year.
Yeah, and you as well. And our other expert in the house is somebody who has actually served with Helping Seniors since before there was Helping Seniors. And we're so fortunate because last year she said, I can clear some time on my calendar. I really want to help you guys in this very important work. She's been a registered nurse for 33 years in her career and then ended up doing a lot of significant management, healthcare management with one of the largest home care agencies in our area. She's been a board member, served on the board when Joe founded the organization and has kind of helped all the way through. But now she is in the role of operations director for the Helping Seniors organization. I'm talking about Nancy Deardorff. Hello, Nancy. How are you?
Hello, Kerry. I'm well. Happy New Year.
And you as well. And, you know, as we're talking about this thing, we just released the January 2022 Helping Seniors newsletter. And it's got some cute little ducks on the cover. So if you get that, you look for it in the center section of Senior Scene magazine. That's that popular magazine. They do 14,000 copies every month. You can pick them up at 500 locations around the county. John Fredrickson, who's the publisher, has also been helping us with Helping Seniors going almost back to the first day. So he lets us put our newsletter in the center section of his magazine. And this year, when we deemed our theme to be Getting Your Ducks in a Row, which is something Joe has talked about from the get-go, which is everybody needs to have an aging plan. And so we thought, let's devote our time and space this year so that by the time we get down to the end of the year, everybody who's been following along with Helping Seniors will have their own aging plan. And Bill, I know you have helped Joe really from the outset as an elder law attorney. You're always involved in helping families organize this. And so we thought maybe we'll kick off this first show of Helping Seniors this year with something kind of practical. So you may want to grab maybe a paper and a pencil and or pen and take some notes, because we're going to talk about 5 documents you need now. So that's where we start, Bill.
Okay, so we are talking about the 5 documents, and realize this is going to be from a elder law attorney perspective. So in my world, probably the most important 5 documents are to have a will and or a trust. That is a document that devises what you own to your heirs. Mm-hmm. Then you would probably need a durable power of attorney, and that is who would manage your finances if you were to become incapacitated. And basically it gives them the keys to your financial world and doing anything financially that they could need to do. Then the third one would be a designation of healthcare surrogate. That would be who would make your healthcare decisions if you're unable to. The living will would be number 4. That's your end-of-life decisions. Do you want life support continued if you are incapacitated and in either a terminal condition, an end-stage condition, or a persistent vegetative state? And then the last one is one most people are really familiar with, would be the pre-need guardian declaration. If a guardianship action is filed to have you declared incapacitated, who would you want to be your guardian? So that rounds out the top 5 in my world.
Okay. So Nancy Deardorff, one of the things we were talking about when we were all in sort of planning at the end of last year, and we said, let's make this our focus on this year, because Joe has always said, our whole life, they ask you for your plan, right? You're in school. They say, what's your plan when you grow up? Are you going to go to college? What kind of job do you want to have? Then when you are allegedly grown up, then they say, what's your career plan? What are you going to do? Are you going to raise kids? Are you going to send them to college? And then someplace along the way, they start talking to us about a retirement plan. But they're always talking about what that means. Do you have a 401k? Do you have provisions for savings? How are you going to financially survive as you choose to retire? But what Joe means by an aging plan is, just like we have hurricane plans here in Florida, it means in case something bad is headed your way, do you have a plan to get around it? And Nancy, you as we were talking about this whole concept of that should be one of our goals as an organization in 2022, is to help people organize their thoughts and their plans towards an aging plan. But we also talk a lot about, for many people, this is something we put off a lot. We don't want to think about it. Maybe we'll do anything but this until it becomes a crisis. And all too often, and you, when you are involved in the Helping Seniors information line, you get a lot of crisis calls. And I got to say, because I know I've asked Bill the question, but I got to ask you, you probably wish these people had maybe contacted us a month or two before, because more options existed.
Absolutely. That happens a lot. We get a lot of calls. One of the calls I receive often is for instance, an elderly couple. One may have dementia. The able-bodied person with no cognitive impairment is caring for that person. And suddenly the able-bodied, non-cognitively impaired person has to go to the hospital. Who sits with that person that they're taking care of? People just don't think of things like that. What are the provisions for care for that person? They can't go to the hospital with them. Who is caring for that person? Get a lot of issues like that. And not just couples. Sometimes it's families who take a parent in, and the parent has no money, and they're caring for the parent, and then their care level goes up and they can no longer cope with that, or they can't go to their job anymore because there were no plans put in place for what if. Particularly, you always want to plan for unplanned things, like you said, a hurricane, which is what an aging plan is for. But when you're dealing with someone with dementia, especially, you have to realize that's a progressive illness. It will get worse. So you might be fine now caring for mom or dad in your own home. It's manageable, but you have to have a plan in place knowing that that is going to progress and their care level is going to go up.
Right. And so each month, as you pick up your copy of Senior Scene magazine and look for that center section, the Helping Seniors newsletter, you're going to find topics that are going to help you kind of checklist your way through this. This first month, actually, Bill, you already did an article in the January edition called Getting Your Legal Ducks in a Row for the New Year. And that sort of like kicks off the theme. It's like the opening article in the whole newsletter. And it sort of shares what we're hoping that we're going to accomplish together with you, is helping you get that aging plan together as we go through 2022. But the other thing, Nancy, that I was thinking about as we were talking about this, so often we get inadvertently above we live on the Space Coast, so we know NASA acronyms, right? So rocket scientists all have a certain speak and they can quote acronyms, but a lot of times some of the language gets pretty specific in some of this, and I don't know necessarily that we should assume that all of us know what these words meant. And so one of the things, Nancy, we talked about from the very beginning was trying to break this down in a way that it would be accessible for just everybody to work with.
I agree. I mean, one of the things I've seen in my nursing career and also personally is not understanding. Mr. Johnson talked about a living will. I talked about it with my father, who's passed on, but years ago. Being a nurse, fairly responsible daughter, I said, we need to get that for you. And he did not understand. People get do not resuscitate orders mixed up with what a living will is. They associate it with death and dying. They don't want to talk about it. My father was one of them. And a living will does not prevent you from getting CPR, for instance, if you, God forbid, were to have a cardiac arrest. So people don't understand the difference between a living will, a do not resuscitate. Perhaps they never even heard of a do not resuscitate. They don't understand the difference between a surrogate. I've had people think that a durable power of attorney or power of attorney means that their kids will steal everything from them and take over their finances immediately. Obviously, you have to have somebody that you trust that acts, and I'll let Mr. Johnson talk to that. But people are not understanding what these documents are, what they're for, and when they become active.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And so, Bill, let's talk about that first document. We're talking about 5 documents that you really should have as part of your aging plan. It's a place to start. And as Bill said at the outset of the show, we're talking specifically, these are some legal documents. But the first thing that you mentioned, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, you said wills and trusts. And here's maybe my opening question. We've all seen enough movies, so we all have seen the attorney gather the family around and read the will. But then there's this thing called trust. Now, to an average person, oftentimes I hear the word trust and I think, oh, that's for them rich people over there. But that's not exactly the case, is it?
Generally not. It's a vehicle to avoid probate.
Okay, see now we're into another buzzword, probate. So some people have been through that. I know enough to know that's like the legal process that you would normally go through after somebody passes away.
So if you have assets that are not jointly owned, don't have a beneficiary on them, or are not in a trust, those assets go through probate when you die. And probate's the process where we take the will to the courthouse. The court appoints the nominated personal representative as what we would call executor of the estate, gives them authority to go out and muster the assets, pay the debts, and then whatever's left over they distribute. But we have to go through the court system, and that takes time, and usually it's about 9 to 12 months. And then someone like me typically can charge 3% of the value of the assets going through probate. and the personal representative can charge another 3%.
Wow.
So, yeah, on $1 million probate, 3% is $30,000. It's not a insignificant amount of money. But we can avoid probate in several ways. One is put a beneficiary on the asset, because then it'll just pass automatically to whoever you've named. You could have joint ownership, where the surviving joint owner owns the asset, or put it in a trust. And a trust is basically a contract. It's a contract between yourself and yourself. You're the one making the contract, so you're called the grantor. You are the one managing the assets in the trust, so you're the trustee. And then during your lifetime, you're the beneficiary of those assets. You can do whatever you want with them. Then when you pass on, in the document, you nominate somebody as a successor trustee. And when they put that hat on, they become bound by the terms of the contract. And they have to follow whatever your wishes were in that. Because we have that alternative way of nominating somebody to distribute the assets, we don't have to go to court to do it. That's why the assets in a trust avoid probate.
Yeah, and I was going to say, listener, if you're familiar with, I'm going to give you a website that you definitely want to jot down, helpingseniorsofbrevard.org, helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. And what we're talking about is the fact that there's 5 documents you really want to make sure that you have available for you in your aging plan. And on that website, you're going to find a lot of videos that Joe and myself have had the privilege of working with Bill to present this information. I remember in particular one about probate. We've talked about a lot of these terms that we talk about today, guardianship, all those things. There's some really good material that's available for you to catch up on helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. You can also access those videos on the Helping Seniors of Brevard YouTube channel and Facebook page. But coming back to this thing about trust, we're talking with Bill Johnson, elder law attorney with William A. Johnson. By the way, you have a great website at floridaelderlaw.net, which is another place people can access a lot of this information. But when you talk about trust, so in general, everybody, do they have to have, is it like there's a certain amount of money that they need to have before you say this is worth you doing, or is it just pretty much applies to everyone?
Well, there are certain times where you really have to have a trust. If you have real property in multiple states, if you have minor children, if you have spendthrift children, children who are going to spend every nickel, you may want to dole it out over time. If you have special needs children, those are pretty much the ones where you should have a trust.
Wow.
But there are a lot of ways nowadays that you can put beneficiaries on virtually everything, your bank accounts, your house. So there are alternative ways. It's really kind of, you have to look at what the assets are, and then there may be an easier way than a trust.
So is it safe to say that, if you own a house, now you're already in the level where you should probably be having a will and trust? I mean, where do you sort of draw the line in what you recommend for folks?
Well, everybody should have a will.
Okay.
At a minimum. That's the safety net for everything. And also, if you were to die in, say, an accident, whoever you nominate as the executor would be the one to bring the wrongful death action. So they do become important, even if no assets are going to pass per the will.
So literally everyone should sit down and make sure they have a will or, if the situation warrants,
a trust.
A trust. Yeah. Well, that was the first one we talked about. Nancy, is something that I should be adding into this conversation, or do we move to document number 2?
Well, I want to give Bill Johnson as much airtime to talk as possible because I think this is so important. But on a personal note, I've recently been through this, still through it. I'm the trustee for a family member who's passed on, and the executor. We ended up with both because their ducks weren't all in a row. Right. The person that I'm trustee and executor for when they were alive, told me what they paid for an attorney to do all this. And at first, and I've talked to a couple of callers about this, and when I first learned the charge, I was like, wow, that's so expensive. And it's going to be, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. But if you have money, which my family member did, the hesitancy to want to pay that is there. You're like, I don't want to pay that amount of money for that. You want to use it for fun stuff and living. After going through this it was two family members, and I'll just be forthright. It was my sister, who was 18 years my senior, and my brother-in-law, and they crashed and burned pretty much at the same time. I took over, and so going through things while they were alive, and then it still continues now that they're gone, and all that the estate attorney that they hired has taken care of. There is nothing more worth it in the world, I can tell you. I could not have navigated this without the estate attorney that they hired. I when they were alive, to get this all in place, and even after the fact. So you have to think of it that way. It's well worth it.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And I think that's why Bill Johnson, as an elder law attorney, takes so much time to do these training classes, because we've had this conversation many times on the radio that even though maybe as a business proposition it's more profitable to be on the backside and trying to sort out the mess, it's like with a firefighter. They just don't want to see you be in the mess to start with, so they'd rather help you get things organized before you get there. So I guess number one in our documents is that we're going to make sure that we have a will or trust as appropriate. And on the second half of the show, we're going to come back and we're going to start to work on the next one, which is power of attorney. And again, Bill Johnson, we've done a number of shows on the Helping Senior side about power of attorney. But before we get there, if people are hearing this and they say, I got to give a call, I got a question, I want to learn more about all this, Bill, how do they get in touch with your office?
It's the phone number is 321-253-1667.
All right, that's Bill Johnson. You can also look at FloridaElderLaw.net. And as we come back for the second half of the Helping Seniors radio hour here on 90.3 FM WEJF, we're going to dive into the 5 most important documents that you need as part of your aging plan. So we'll see you on the other side of the break.
And our time coming up on 12:31 on this Wednesday afternoon. You're listening to Helping Seniors of Brevard. I'm John Harper, but more important, let's get back to the host of Helping Seniors of Brevard and the executive director of the organization as well. I'm talking about Kerry Fink. Hello again, Kerry.
Hello, John Harper, and welcome back for the second half of the Helping Seniors radio program right here on 90.3 FM WEJF. We gather each Wednesday around the radio lunchtime, and we want to welcome also the listeners who join us online at WEJF.net, and those who will hear the program later, because with all the media we do, whether it's radio, TV, the newsletter articles, everything like that, all of that, we plug into the Helping Seniors of Brevard.org website, and for at least the radio and TV parts, we put them on the YouTube channel and the Facebook. They call it Facebook Watch these days, but it's where you watch or listen to video on your, you can grab it on your mobile phone if you want and hear it. So to everybody who is joining the Helping Seniors organization, thank you for joining us. We are a Florida nonprofit, which Nancy Deardorff, who is our operations director, that gives us a great opportunity to talk about the annual fund drive for a moment before we get into the second part of the radio show.
It absolutely does. So right now we're in the middle of our annual fund drive, and we need your support.
Yep.
There are so many organizations out there outside of our county, and what I ask people is consider giving. No amount is too small, and all of your funds stay right here in Brevard County for Helping Seniors. We do not have a large overhead. Your money is not going towards an executive director or operations director that make oodles of money. Your money directly impacts our ability to reach more seniors and help seniors live a better life. But beyond the annual fundraising, which we're in the midst of now, we ask your consideration to give any time of year is fine. Any amount is fine. No amount is too small. So please help us, and you can donate either by going online, or you can give me a call on our senior information line, and I can walk you through that process at 321-473-7770.
Yeah, and just to dovetail on that, you may have gotten a letter in the mail if you helped us before. You may have gotten a letter in the mail from Joe Steckler, our president and founder, asking for your help. I know we also pumped out an e-blast, so everybody who's part of the Helping Seniors, I guess I would say family, should know about it. But it's real easy. Like Nancy was saying, just give us a call, 321-473-7770, and say, hey, I just want to help you guys as part of the annual fund drive. Or you can go to helpingseniorsofbrevard.org/donate, and you can give safely and securely right there online. But our program today, we're kind of following our theme of get your ducks in a row, and our guest in the studio, as it is the first show of each month, is board-certified elder law attorney, longtime friend of Helping Seniors, Bill Johnson with the law firm of William A. Johnson. Hello and welcome back, Bill.
I'm still here.
Good. Thank you for being here and donating your time into the Helping Seniors organization as we try to help people figure out their aging plans. And so that's what we've actually been talking about on this show, 5 documents you need. And we spent a good part of the first show just talking about wills and things like that. And let me just, if you grab a pencil, you'll want to jot these down so you can kind of follow the bouncing ball. But the first document was, we talked about wills or trusts as needed. The second is power of attorney. The third is a living will. The fourth was a health care surrogate, and then the fifth was maybe a pre-need guardianship. And so we're going to try to tackle power of attorney very simplistically. And for right now, the reason for that is because, Bill, you did an excellent TV show in particular. I remember it. You explained not only power of attorney, but something you called superpowers. And at first I was thinking like, oh, this is out of a Marvel comic book or a movie or something. But no, it's a whole different thing. So power of attorney.
Okay. Durable power of attorney is a document where you give someone the power to manage all your financial affairs. The document is durable, which means it survives your incapacity. And there should be a paragraph in the document that says this document's not affected by the subsequent mental or physical incapacity of the maker. That's what makes it durable. The power of attorney part of it is that you're making somebody your agent, and you're giving them a whole laundry list of things they can do, like transfer property, sign checks, sell stocks, all kinds of things like that. Now in Florida, unless you specifically give somebody a power, they do not have it. So it has to be very specific. So most of these done by attorneys are like 13, 14 pages long,
Wow.
full of boilerplate. In 2011, we developed something called the superpowers. These are ones that have to be initialed next to in order for the person to have the authority to do that, either initialed or signed, a signature. And these are ones like change beneficiaries on life insurance policies, create a trust, and things like that. And so you specifically have to give that authority by signature. So they're usually at the end of most people's power of attorney or somewhere in the body. So if you have something like that and there is no initial or signature next to it, they may not have that authority because you have to sign off on those specifically.
Yeah, and we've talked about this so many times. You've made me aware of the challenges your office faces. Somebody comes in and maybe they bring something in that the lady from church helped them fill out, or they got at an office supply store, or they maybe tried this themselves online. The thing that always seems like the big glaring red neon don't do this is the problem that you run into is that these documents don't often get tested until they're needed. And if they're found wanting at that point, you're in a whole lot of trouble.
I just had this today. A lady
Wow.
came in with a document she had gotten off the internet. It was a durable power of attorney. It must have been from some other state, is my guess. It was 2 pages long, so didn't have what she needed in it. there was a signature line and a notarization. Now in Florida, we require 2 witnesses.
Wow.
So, I mean, she could have signed this thing and thought she was covered, and it wouldn't have done probably anything for her.
Yeah, and we've talked about that. Fortunately, the people who come into your office are at least smart enough to ask for your guidance. But think about how many people must think, oh, I'm already covered, and then they show up at a hospital or a bank or something at a time of crisis, and they're not ready to go. This is why it's so important, Nancy, as we're talking about, you got to have an aging plan. You've lived this yourself.
Oh, I definitely have lived it, and I think that it's certainly not uniquely, but does qualify me. And the only good thing I can say is having lived through it, it really helps me guide callers when they do call our Helping Seniors information line.
Yeah. So document number 1, will or trust. Document number 2, power of attorney. But let's move on to the living will. Now, this sounds a little, to a person that's not in the legal field like myself, this sounds a little bit like, what does this mean? What is a living will? I mean, I understand a will, I passed away, somebody's going to get my stuff.
Exactly. If I had been around when they created this, I would have used a totally different name for it, because people get confused all the time. They think a living will is a document where you're leaving your assets to somebody. And that's not what it is. It is what your end of life wishes are in the event that you are incapacitated, meaning you can't tell your doctor yourself. And you're in usually one of 3 conditions: a terminal condition, that would be something like cancer with a finite life expectancy; an end-stage condition, that would be something more like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's disease; or you're in a persistent vegetative state. That would be kind of like the Terry Schiavo case. And you indicate whether or not you want life support continued, if it is only prolonging the dying process. And when we think of living wills, we think of ventilators, pacemakers, dialysis, any kind of life support that's keeping you alive. Now, when you think of a do not resuscitate order, you think of the paddles. Okay? And that you have to get from your doctor. And that means you have died and you don't want to be brought back to life. Where a living will is you're alive, but you don't want this dying, you're dying, and you don't want the process dragged out.
You know, that seems to be one of those things where I'm thinking as an individual, these are tough choices to even know how to answer those questions correctly. Is that something, as you guys sit down with folks and you say, okay, let's put together your living will? I'm sure people ask you a lot of times, well, how do I fill this thing out? I don't know what to answer.
Well, mine, I have those choices, and then I have another choice that you could just leave it all in the hands of your healthcare surrogate. So you can, if you want the boots on the ground approach, where you don't trust definitions.
Right.
And then I have another box that is, I want all means necessary used to keep me alive, no matter what.
Okay.
I've only had one person ever check that box in all the years I've been doing this. And I've had quite a few people check the box to leave it in the hands of the healthcare surrogate, but most people just check off all the boxes.
Okay. Well, so that kind of is not necessarily a bad segue. So the living will is what you want to happen to you when you're not in a position to express what you want to have happen to you.
Correct.
Is that a good layperson's way to say it?
And you're dying, yes.
Yeah. And I guess maybe corollary to that, because I think if there's one thing that we have learned out of this whole COVID experience collectively is that things can shift in like a heartbeat.
It brings to mind that expression, when the tide goes out, you see who's not wearing a bathing suit.
Oh, wow.
And it's really true. The tide went out, and it caught all kinds of people who hadn't done any planning.
Yeah, I remember early on, because, you guys were deemed an essential business, and so you had to find ways to stay open through the thick and thin of it. And I remember you were explaining some of the extraordinary lengths you guys went to. You had people, you had curbside signings and all kinds of things. And I remember you were explaining how difficult it was to work with clients who were in nursing facilities or places where you couldn't access because of these lockdowns.
Yeah, basically the nursing homes and the assisted livings in the hospital shut their doors.
Yeah.
Well, how do you get in to get some of these documents signed?
So this is all the reason why you got to do this stuff ahead of time in terms of your aging plan. Now, so that's what the living will is. But when we use this term healthcare surrogate, so what does that actually mean?
A healthcare surrogate is somebody you nominate to make your healthcare decisions when a doctor deems you're unable to give informed consent. Then they take over making your healthcare decisions. It can, well, I should take that back. You can have two different variations. One is when the doctor deems you're unable to give informed consent, or you can check a box and have it effective immediately.
Okay.
Because sometimes, quite frankly, it's hard to get the doctor to note in your medical file that you're unable to give informed consent.
Right.
And you maybe end up chasing the doctor around for a few days trying to do that. But that person then can go about, access your healthcare records, make your healthcare decisions, and basically anything that deals with healthcare.
So maybe this is a naive question, but I think most of us might assume a family member has the right to do that anyway, like, your spouse or maybe a child.
There is a backup statute called the Healthcare Proxy Statute, and it has a pecking order of people who would make your healthcare decisions in the absence of a healthcare surrogate.
Okay.
And it starts off with your guardian, and then we go to a spouse, then we go to we go to parents, and then a majority of your adult children, and next closest friend, and it ends with social worker.
Wow. Yeah. And one of the things I'm smiling because I remember something that you had said about this very thing. It's like, well, this all works good as long as everybody is getting along. But I mean, typically these documents are being tested in times of great stress, a lot of uncertainty and all of that. And you don't want to fight to break out at that point.
Right. And, even if you were relying on the healthcare proxy statute, there is no financial mirror image of that. So you may be able to rely on the healthcare proxy to make the healthcare decisions in the absence of a healthcare surrogate, but that's not going to get the bill at the nursing home paid. You need the durable power of attorney to go do that.
That's why all these things have to kind of operate. I would call it like a suite of documents. So we're talking about 5 documents today with elder law attorney, board certified elder law attorney, Bill Johnson. Document number 1 is wills and trust. Document number 2, power of attorney. Document number 3, living will. Document number 4, health care surrogate. And, there was another point that I wanted to bring up. You had explained once that healthcare surrogate doesn't always apply to just seniors, right? Because you said once your child reaches like adulthood, you as a parent, you're back to that pecking order. You may not be at the top of that pecking order.
Right. A good example, let's talk about like durable power of attorney. Say your kid's in an accident in a coma and you want to get into their bank account. Well, if they haven't given you power of attorney to do that, you can't get into that account.
Wow. So this is why this planning is so important. And Nancy Deardorff, again, your background, you've been hands-on registered nurse for something like 33 years, but also all those years that you were involved in managing home health care, you must have seen a lot of challenges just with some of the stuff we're talking about today.
Oh, absolutely. As I said before, we are required by regulation. I worked for, a Medicare certified home health agency. We're required to review advance directives. Specifically, we ask, do you have a living will? If you don't have one, do you want one? And we have to provide them in home health a connection to get that. And more often than not, I would get these people in home health care that would say, oh, no, honey, I already have a will. When I said, do you have a living will or do you want one? No, I already have a will. I'm all set. And that's where we have to sit down and break it down and speak simply. So people understand, no, that's not. And then the other confusion, as I said, was the difference between a living will and a do not resuscitate. I would say, do you want do you want to be resuscitated or not? We would put it gently, and more often than not, people would say, oh no, I'm all set. I have a living will. But a living will only kicks into effect if you are in a terminal condition and unable to speak for yourself, if I'm saying that correctly. So if you if you're not in a terminal condition or a persistent vegetative state, and you were to have a heart attack, and you're at 90-year-old, and there's plenty of 90-year-olds that are very healthy. If you're 90 and you had a cardiac arrest, would you want someone pounding on your chest to bring you back? And they would say, oh, I thought that was covered in a living will. And we would have to say, no, that's a do not resuscitate. So a lot of confusion out there.
Yeah, well, that's why this whole thing, our theme at Helping Seniors this year in 2022, is to help you define your own aging plan. In fact, some of the things that we're talking about today, these 5 documents that everyone really needs to have as part of your aging plan, Bill is actually going to have an article coming up in the February edition of the Helping Seniors newsletter where we actually kind of enunciate and go through these. But I want to remind you that most of these topics, because Bill has been so kind with his time over the years, there's so many good TV and radio programs that cover this topic. All you got to do is go to like the YouTube page for Helping Seniors and type in Bill Johnson, and all these TV shows and radio shows for that matter are going to come up. The 5th one that we wanted to cover today, this is a little bit kind of maybe counterintuitive. It's called Pre-Need Guardian. And I guess from a layperson's perspective, what I've come to understand, because we have talked about this a lot on the radio, is a lot of times folks will show up in your office. Mom or dad just became, maybe they had a stroke or there's something. They're in a hospital, and now just everything is breaking loose on all sides, and they're trying to figure out, we got to figure out the paperwork. Somebody's got to go make sure that Florida Power is paid back at home while all this is going on over at the hospital, and all these different moving parts of the equation. And then you sometimes it must be a very difficult situation that you feel like you're put in to explain, like, there is no simple answer until we get to a guardianship.
Correct. You do all the foregoing documents, the power of attorney and healthcare surrogate, to avoid having to go to guardianship court. Because in guardianship court, that's where we're going to have a 3-member examining committee look at you, and they report back to the court whether or not you're incapacitated. And if they say you're partially or totally incapacitated, then what happens is we appoint a guardian, and your rights, maybe all or some, are then taken from you and placed with the guardian to act on your behalf.
Wow.
And that whole process right now in Brevard is about a $10,000 proposition.
Wow.
So it would behoove you to have your that's an uncontested one. Contested, sky's the limit.
Wow.
And so if you have these documents done, you don't have to go through that hassle of having to go through court, have a loved one declared incapacitated, which is, that's not the best, thing for relations with your parents. And then the document we're talking about now, the pre-need guardian document, that is kind of the safety net. Like, if a guardianship does get filed, here's who I want to be my guardian. And usually it's the same person you've nominated in your other documents, the power of attorney and healthcare surrogate. But guardianships really pop up in several different ways. One is somebody doesn't have any documents done. So, or somebody has documents done, but they're kind of like what I call that gray area of dementia. They can act, but they're still a big danger to themselves, and they refuse to cooperate. So the healthcare surrogate may be saying, well, we need to get you in assisted living, and they refuse to leave their house. Or we need to get you home health care here, and they won't let them in the front door. So sometimes we have to do a guardianship in that situation to get ultimate control. And then, the people you've named in these documents, they may turn out to be bad actors too. The power of attorney may be stealing from you. So we have to file the guardianship to get them knocked out, and a guardian to put in place to replace that.
Yeah,
but I see a lot of exploitation.
Yeah, I know that's one of the things that we've talked about a lot, is that you would assume that exploitation, you hear about the credit card scams and all those kind of things. Somebody called, and the Nigerian lottery scam and all those kind of things. but yet the statistics really bear out that most of this stuff happens from inside.
Yeah, I think the National Council on Aging says 56% of exploitation is done by spouses or other family members.
Wow, that is pretty incredible. So let's do a recap because we want to make sure that you've taken a moment to kind of jot these things down. So I'm just going to list these, and then remember the January edition of Senior Scene magazine is out, and you can find the Helping Seniors newsletter inside that. But we're also going to recap what Bill is talking about, these 5 documents that you really do need to have as part of your aging plan. He's going to recap that in a full-page article in the February edition. So we're going to make sure that's there. But number 1, wills and trusts. Number 2, your power of attorney. Number 3, the living will. Number 4, the healthcare surrogate. And number 5, the pre-need guardianship. So, Bill, if somebody wants to learn more, get more information, maybe go, well, here's my situation, how do they get in touch with your office? What's the best way for that?
They can call us at 321-253-1667.
And I know you're generous with, you do a lot of like seminars and things. Don't you do seminars over at like One Senior Place from time to time? And so,
I do.
And
and usually do one every month on estate planning and then one on Medicaid.
do you happen to remember off the top of your head when the next one's coming up? Because I know so many people, if they're thinking about this is the start of the new year. We always make our New Year's resolutions. We're going to get this stuff under control. My goodness.
Well, and people are always welcome if they don't remember a phone number or they want future information on lectures from Attorney Bill Johnson. They can always give us a call on the Helping Seniors Helpline at 321-473-7770, and I will hook them up.
Yeah, thank you. That's Nancy Deardorff, our operations director. Great resource in everything on helping seniors. You've helped a lot of people over the years in so many ways, and it's really impressive. I know we talked about the fact that you had like an overwhelming number of calls all of a sudden start to pop up through the holiday season with lots of people needing that help. So that's Nancy Deardorff at the Helping Seniors information line, 321-473-7770. And also our special thanks today for Bill Johnson, board-certified elder law attorney, to be here in the studio with us to share these important items. And before we go, one more time, Bill, let's share the number to your office and any other information that's going to be helpful.
It's 321-253-1667, and I'm doing a seminar on January 18th at 10 o'clock at One Senior Place on estate planning.
Oh, that would be one to mark down on your calendar, January 18th at One Senior Place. Come see Bill Johnson talk about that as we all are working on getting our ducks in a row in 2022. So on behalf of Joe Steckler, our president and founder, the entire Helping Seniors team, and all of us here, we hope you have a good week. Plan to join us right here on 90.3 FM WEJF next Wednesday, 12 noon. We'll see you then.